Welcome to Professor Game Podcast, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who brings the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting the students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I teach and work at IE Business School in Madrid, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Want to know more? Go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start on our email list, and ask me anything. Welcome back, Engagers. Once again, we today have a very special repeat guest. I'm happy to report and to say, at least on my side, that this is a friend that we have today here with us. It's Andrzej. But before we get started, Andrzej, are you prepared to engage?
Absolutely.
Andrzej is always ready because he is a gamification solution designer and consultant at Motivait. He, as you know, and you've probably heard before, he is a recognized expert in gamification, especially on the topic of gamification mechanics and user types. I actually reference him quite a lot in my classes as well. And in 2015, he published Even Ninja Monkeys Like to Play, which has also been updated a couple of times. Very exciting things going on there. I don't know why my tongue got stuck on that one. I've said it so many times. But also in his spare times, we know he enjoys time, of course, with his family, playing guitar, which is a pretty strong passion. You'll see him on YouTube probably quite a bit in that sense, and Instagram as well, I think. And of course, playing video games is definitely still a passion of Andrzej. So Andrzej, is there anything else that we should as well mention here?
No, I think you've covered me in a nutshell. I like games, guitar, and my family. That's pretty much me, I think.
I was hoping to hit that last one for sure.
Yeah, we got a new dog since we last spoke as well, so I like the dog as well.
Oh, that's nice. What kind of dog you have?
We have a miniature schnauzer who is coming up to 1 year old.
Nice. That's so nice. I always enjoy the company of pets in general. My mom has always, well, for quite a while had cats. I'm not a cat or a dog person. I just enjoy pets in general, I would say. I really like dogs. I really like cats. All sorts of things. But anyways, today we are sort of piggybacking back on something that happened a few weeks ago, which was the episode on ethics. And that's probably a good point to start. Ethics in gamification. That was an episode many of you gave some feedback on. It seems like many of the engagers were excited by the topic. And of course, one of the two main people that we mentioned there, and is definitely an expert in that sense in the world of gamification especially, is Andrzej. So I thought, why not bring him back? It's been a while since we were together. And Andrzej, what do you understand by ethics in gamification? Why do you think it is important?
I think ethics in everything is important. We all need some kind of moral compass to work towards. And I think with gamification, it happens so quickly and it can be so effective that I think a lot of people just didn't really consider the ramifications of what they were doing with it. And so you ended up with a lot of stuff where people were a little bit concerned that maybe gamification was taking advantage of them. My big example, I went to Toys R Us when it still existed, and they were getting kids to a treasure hunt around Toys R Us. And although it seemed like a really interesting game, I felt actually there was a slight ethical issue with it because it was using the children to get the parents to buy stuff they wouldn't necessarily have looked at if they hadn't had the treasure hunt. And it was a really obscure thought, but as I've thought about that more, I thought actually this isn't uncommon. There's lots of things that I see with gamification where people are just trying to get you to do something they want you to do without considering what you might want or what you might need. And I felt that was morally incorrect and probably ethically not right as well.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that puts you on that position to think, well, there is a lot of power here. And of course, we hear many times the phrase of Spiderman, with great power comes great responsibility. And of course, in a world like ours, where we're talking about these things, and many people in the gamification world probably enjoy comics and comic books, whatever Marvel or DC is your favorite. But it is definitely important to consider ethics in many places. I myself, I'm teaching supply chain right now. One of the sessions is dedicated basically to ethics and sustainability in the supply chain. It is definitely a big topic in many, many places. And I would say that everywhere. However, as you mentioned in gamification, there's many traps that we can fall into without realizing. And when we think about our objectives, what we're designing for, that is very, very important. And we always, start with the objectives, start with understanding who the people who are going to be there. That's super, super important. But there is that point, and that's one of the points I try to get across in that episode is, how do you actually consider the other person? There is somebody on the other end who's going to be that player you're analyzing. How do you consider their needs, their wants? How do you consider that? Because you mentioned the consideration in the Toys R Us example, but how do you get to that point where you really think and can take into account those needs of the other party? How do you get there? How do you like, you're doing this every day? How do you handle that in an everyday situation?
It seems like a really flippant and simple answer. You speak to them. That sounds pretty stupid when you say it out loud, but I think in your user research and in kind of your continuing analytics and evolution of solutions, you need to always be talking to the people at the other end, because it's really easy when you're designing any solution, not just gamification, to completely forget the user, because you have business objectives from the client. You have your own objectives, things you want to try and do that you want. We all put little things in there that are just for us. I think we all do that. We've all created something where you just put something in because you found it interesting or you wanted to test it out. So you got your business objectives, your own business's objectives. So the end user can almost get forgotten in that, especially when you're continuing to develop a solution after it's been released. So you may have done all the user research at the very beginning, and you may have them in mind when you design it. But a year down the line, when you're updating it, or however many months down the line when you're doing updates and adding new content or whatever it may be, did you go back to the users and talk to them about it? Did you look at the analytics and understand their behaviors and what may or may not be happening? So I think, simply put, talk to the end user and talk to them constantly. It should be an open conversation with them. There shouldn't be any kind of behind closed doors. Or what we need to do is we need more people to do. A great example, if you've got a system which relies on repeated activities and you want people to do more and more and more, one of the kind of the things that you can think to yourself is, if I add, say we have 2 games and that really occupies a lot of their time. If we add in 3 more games, we'll get them to do lots more activity. But unless you actually speak to them and say, is this right for you? Do you really feel you need to do 3 more activities? All you're doing is trying to put in 3 activities because that's what you want to happen. But does it really benefit them? So it's constantly looking at, does what I'm doing benefit the end user in some way, as well as just the stakeholders outside of that?
And I think it's a central consideration. And you brought up a very important point, which is data here, because I've heard this, especially in the world of mobile games and even clickbait and these kinds of things where, you very strictly look at the data and say, well, we found here that if you put a gem here, people will click on it more. Fantastic. That arrives you to reaching that. However, is the user, the player, feeling more satisfied? Are they achieving whatever it is that they set themselves out to achieve when they went into this world that you are creating? That I think that is a very big question. And the only way, as you're saying, is to find out with them. Because you look at the data and you say, well, there's 150 gajillion data points. How can I talk to all those points? Well, maybe you don't have to talk to all of them, right? There's like 2 things. First, like as you said, think and say, well, is the user getting something out of this in the good sense? As any business, I mean, businesses don't make sense unless they are serving some sort of customer or consumer, right? And here, it's the same thing. I mean, somebody is going to be consuming this. Are you serving them in one way or another? And of course, once you start implementing things using data and saying, well, we figured out that putting points, badges, and leaderboards, maybe more people are just clicking in. Is that serving something or someone? And for 2 things. One is in the medium and long term, even you. Is it even serving you? Because if you're paying a disservice to your user, in the end, are they going to still be there? Is gamification going to continue working for them? Is your solution going to be useful for them? And that's the other point I wanted to just sort of introduce. I think, and of course, this is not just for gamification. Ethics in general, they work for the long term as well. They work for you because typically a business wants to be there not just this month, not this year, probably in the medium and the long run as well. Do you think, again, going back to just thinking about you, your business, and your objectives, does it still make sense to consider ethics as well?
Oh, of course it does, because if you want long-term business with people, they need to be able to trust you, and they need to feel that you respect them, and that you're honest with them, that you're transparent with them, and that you have some kind of integrity. And if for whatever reason they feel that that isn't true, they feel that they've been duped into something or tricked, or they feel that you've used techniques that are there purely for your benefit, then they're gonna realize it very quickly. The consumers these days are incredibly intelligent and very savvy towards things like gamification. And I think as soon as you get to a point where they stop trusting you, or they've got fatigued because all you're doing is trying to rinse them for everything that they've got, they switch off and that's the end of it. You've lost them forever. There's no going back from that kind of loss, I don't think.
Absolutely. That's what one of the things I was trying to get at, because again, typically gamification is about engaging people once and again. It's probably not a solution just for getting people through the door once. Typically, at least. I mean, there are all sorts of things. But if you want people to be a repeat customer, you need to build that trust. And if your ethics are not sound and transparent, I mean, in this day and age, all information is out there at some point. I don't know. Like I remember, like here in Madrid, they started these bike rentals that was started by the government, and I don't know exactly what the technical problem was, but apparently, you could access sort of the database through a very simple solution. That happened in hours. Like literally, they launched that, and somebody figured it out and went and saw like the information of hundreds of thousands of people. They had to shut it down immediately. Why? Because the information was out there. I mean, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago, something similar would have happened. And between the time you launched the product, you put it out there, the time you realize and you brought it back, there could be a long time and you still had sort of the excuse. At this point, it's going to come out. You're not going to have enough, time to trick people for long enough, so to speak. So thinking of your own business and in your own interest as a gamification designer, as a business owner, you always have to think of your user. They're the reason you are there. If you don't have users, if you don't have consumers and customers, there's no reason for your business to exist. Again, whether those be intermediaries or the final consumer, whatever that looks like, you always need to have them there. And again, from a very practical standpoint, Andrzej, when you're going to, again, we're thinking of talking to our consumers or players. We're thinking about handling the ethics. Let's say you jump into a project which you're probably doing pretty frequently right now. How do you incorporate the ethics? Like, do you have a conversation with the team? Do you have a conversation with the client? Do you have maybe an example that, of course, you can anonymize as needed, that you can share with us of a difficult situation? We sort of want to be around and see what it looks like for you.
It's quite a difficult question because it's so embedded in what we do, because Motivait is a small company, and I think all of us bring particular skills and particular kind of ideas to the team, but we all come from a very similar standpoint when it comes to ethics and how we work with stuff. So I can't think of any positions where it's been an awkward position with ethics, because it's designed.
That's nice.
Yeah, exactly. It is very nice. It's designed like that from the beginning. So the first thing we do once we understand what we're trying to achieve and what the client wants is talk to the users and speak to them about what we're doing, what their needs are, what we're trying to achieve with it. So from the very, very beginning, it's built in almost by default. And then when you sort of consider data and that kind of stuff, we don't really have much choice around that anymore, because GDPR means that data is really difficult to use. So I think, I'm in that nice position where the people that I work with and the company that I'm in, there's no ulterior motive to what we're doing. It's always, we have a business objective from the client and we have the objectives of the people who are involved. So if you take a look at a loyalty scheme, we know what the end user wants. The majority of the time, the end user is looking for a way of saving money, essentially. That's what loyalty schemes are there for, is to save people money from the end user's perspective. So you actually start from that and you speak to them about how that works and what kind of data is needed to be collected to make that happen. And then you're very transparent about what happens with that data. And again, GDPR has helped with this immensely, because you have to do it like that. You have to be transparent. You have to anonymize data, so there can't be any silliness around knowing what an individual has done, for instance. So again, it sounds like a bit of a flake out answer. I've not had any issues like that where ethics have caused me a problem professionally, because I've never designed anything or been asked to design. No, I have. No, actually, rephrase that. I've never had. So within Motivait, I've never been asked to design anything which I felt had an ethical issue, because they were always being done for loyalty, working with customers to do something the customers really were benefiting from, and employee engagement, where again it was being designed. Things are being designed to help the employee, not the company specifically. So it wasn't trying to get the company to do more of something. I have had positions where I've been looking at things and wondering what we're building benefit, not with Motivait actually, but what's being built would benefit the end user. So I don't know whether it's ethical or just kind of almost practical about what it's going to do. So it's more about designing to get people to do more of something within an organization. And when you actually start looking at it, you go, well, from an ethical perspective, there's no issue, because we're not doing anything that we're not telling them we're going to do. But you are sat there going, but how does it help them? What do they get out of this? When you start to analyze, I remember doing this. It was a couple of years before I started at Motivait, and I was looking at this particular project going, I don't see what the end user gets from it. So I suppose it was morals rather than ethics. For me, I couldn't do anything with this project, because all that was going to happen was employees would be made to work harder and do more, and they didn't get any benefit from it. And that, for me, went against everything I believed in to do with gamification. It's got to be a two-way street. There has to be something in it for the person at the other end of the game. So whether that was ethics or morals, I don't know. There's a grey area in between where it's personally my moral compass said there's no benefit to the end user, so there's no point doing this project. I suppose ethically, you're looking at the integrity of what you do, because if I was to do what I knew I could do, I suppose there is an ethical issue, because I knew I could do things that would essentially, trick's the wrong word, but it would get people to do more of what the company wanted for quite a while without the employees necessarily realizing that there was no benefit to them. I think points, badges, and leaderboard systems do this all the time when they're just thrown in as a kind of, we want people to be more productive. That's the word you get given. We need more productivity. You think, okay, that's great. I can get them to do more of something, but whilst that might check the box of they're doing more, is there any quality to what they're doing, or are we just looking for quantity? And quite a lot of the time, especially when I was first starting out, companies were interested in quantity, not quality. So you could put systems in that would make them do more of something. It's like the whole idea of, well, I can make you click like 100 times, but after the 101st time, you're not going to be that interested. And the companies will be sat there going, yeah, but we need those 100 clicks.
Well, watch out for the cow clicker, huh?
Yeah, this is it. And don't start me on Bogost's cow clicker. The failed experiment that was people need more than just clicking on something, and it becomes one of the biggest games ever online. Oh, maybe they don't. But yeah, I think the ethics of it for me was that there was no benefit to the end user of that. And for me to design what was necessary, I think would be essentially, it would damage my integrity, because it would be tricking people into doing something that there was no benefit to them in the long run. So yeah, I suppose that's a difficult situation, but I said I haven't had that in many, many years, thankfully. And that was quite early on when I was starting out. I was a bit more naive about what people wanted out of the kind of gamification world at that point.
Absolutely. And quick question, or maybe not so quick, like, of course, without details, because I know it's a very uncomfortable situation, but how did you manage to get out of it, or did you get out of it? Like, how did you manage to go through that situation yourself? Because this is a struggle, I'm sure it's not only you've gone through, many have gone through or will go through in the future. So I think it's a very neat place to get some recommendations on how you did it, or what you didn't do that you would do now. So
that, as I said early on, that situation occurred twice. The second time I walked away from it because there was no, having spoken to the client about what should be done and what the benefits were, and in fact actually that gamification wasn't their actual solution. It was more about communication in their instance. I just walked away. There was no point being involved in it because I just didn't feel right doing it. The first time when it happened, I was able to convince them that it wasn't a great way of doing it, essentially. As they once they understood my concerns about it, and I gave them an alternative that wasn't just about productivity. It was about encouraging quality and people getting more involved rather than it just being, write it. Say the example of writing comments on a forum as a good analogy, where if you want people to write comments on a forum and you say to them, for every comment you get £1 or €1 or whatever. So what you end up with is you get lots of one-word comments because they're only doing it to get the euro. They don't have to do anything. If you say to them, what we want is really good content that's going to help other people, and there might be a random reward in it somewhere, or some kind of incentive, but it'll be peer-reviewed, you'll be reviewing other people's, they'll be reviewing yours, then the question of quality is less of a problem because there's no reward just for saying, there's no turning up reward. You don't just turn up and get the money. You actually have to do something that's worth having, and actually looking towards getting people to create good content because they want to. Understanding you're going to engage less people but get something better out of it. So it was a very similar situation to that around knowledge management. So it was explaining to the client what was going to be more beneficial to them. It wasn't going to be 200 people writing one word. It was going to be 2 people writing 200 words would be much more beneficial to them. So it was just changing the way the client thought about it.
I love that example because not only were you able to sort of get around it, but it also shows like sometimes, because when we talk about ethics and morals and so on, like sometimes we get the feeling that it's because there is a third party who is like evil. You know what I mean? It's like the devil is on the other side and we have to run away from the devil or kick it in the face and run away or trick it to getting better. Pretty often there's another human being on the other side of the table who doesn't necessarily mean evil. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they just don't realize what they're doing. I mean, and I'm sure we have done those things. Well, not necessarily those things in particular, but we've done things that then, if you think about them more deeply, you realize, I probably wouldn't have done that. And not only because we did something stupid, but because probably we put ourselves in an ethical conflict. So I love about that story the fact that you sat down and said, look, this is what's happening here. These are my concerns. I mean, maybe you have different concerns. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. But these are my concerns. And not only from an ethical standpoint, but also from the quality of what you're going to get. It's not just about getting, as you were saying, more comments in the chat. It's about getting quality comments. And I sort of bring that back, for example, to my classes. Of course, there is a sort of an external incentive of getting a good grade, which is kind of there as well. But when you're considering participation in the classroom, you don't want people to raise their hands and say their names. That is pointless. That is making everybody lose their time. You want quality comments. So even though there's that external, validation of the grade, what you're expecting of those students when they participate is a quality comment, something that moves forward the discussion.
Yeah.
Which is kind of related to that chat box as well. Hopefully,
it's funny. Something that I've come across in business quite a lot is. It's slightly off track, but interesting from that perspective is that I think as we grow up into business, there's this kind of perception that you need to be heard. And I've been in so many meetings over the last 20 years or whatever, where people have just spoken because they feel like they haven't spoken for a while, and that if they don't, they're going to get in trouble or something because they're not contributing. And so you get into this situation where you almost end up with kind of I'd say like a business Tourette. Someone will just suddenly go, and actually I have to agree with that, and then sit back down again. You think, well, great, okay, thanks. It is, I think, and it's the way we're brought up is to make sure people know that you're paying attention is by interrupting. It's not active listening. So anyway, totally aside, but it's not just students who do that. Businesses do that all the time. We're
inside an incentive system that pushes us to do that for sure. I mean,
actually, going back to back on the ethics thing. Actually, going back to something you said a minute ago about evil. I always used to cringe when you had that thing with Google, do no evil, because I always thought about it as evil is really a point of perspective sometimes. I may perceive something that somebody's done as evil, but they don't. And society may perceive it as evil, but the person doing it might well have had the absolute best of intentions. They just had a slightly warped perspective on how to do it. So before we came onto this, we were talking a little bit about politics. I'm sure there are some politicians who genuinely believe the things they are doing are for the greater good. And it won't be until history writes about it and somebody looks back at it and goes, do you know what? It may have been terrible for the people involved, but that one person actually truly thought what they were doing was great. And they may well have been evil by every definition of it, but in their own head they weren't. So one of the things that I find really helpful when doing anything around ethics and design is putting yourself in the position of the people who are involved. So a lot of role play, a lot of user analysis, empathy, kind of doing that design thinking thing of putting yourself in that person's position or the position of lots of different characters to try and understand how it would look to them. So if me standing there with a baseball bat while they're typing, for me may seem like a really good idea because it might incentivize them to do more typing because they're afraid of the baseball bat. If I then put myself in the position of the person looking at the guy with the baseball bat, maybe it doesn't feel so good. You know, a really bad example, but you know what I mean.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it actually makes sense. And it, again, as you were saying, it reins us back into the topic, into something very practical as well. Like, as you were saying, I don't think that people do evil and they laugh, you know, like the guy, the mini-me guy, and say, yeah, I'm so evil. I'm doing this because I am evil. I don't think we're sort of programmed that way because I don't know if we enjoy being evil. There might be people with disorders and things that, you know, all sorts of different things, but nobody's doing it out of the thought that I'm doing this because I'm going to enjoy somebody else not being better off. You know what I mean? Like there's a Schadenfreude and all that, but
no, not in the sort of wider real world.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Of course, again, there are disorders and there's people who have problems, so to speak. Yeah. But in general terms, it is very important to keep in mind that the person in front of you, and this applies to each and every one of us. I can tell you, like a job right now, I've had arguments with people like, why are you doing this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. You're just hurting everybody in the process. But then if you like sort of sit back and think like, why would this person be doing this? There's probably a reason. I'm not saying you're going to find it. I'm not even going to say you agree with it, but there is a reason there. And understanding those reasons there and helping the other person, there's another person always in an argument. There's you and there's the other person, helping that other person understand your perspective. And you yourself trying to understand their perspective is what, as Andrzej was saying, putting yourself in their shoes, that trying to get them into yours is where you actually are able to reach a better understanding. I would argue in general, of course, again, this is generalizing. If you get a group of people to agree onto something and that this is ethical and this seems to be for the greater good, it's easier than you just sitting alone in your cave and saying, I think this is for the best of everyone. I'm sure quite a few evil characters did that and it didn't end up well.
I mean, if you ever want to sort of really think about ethics and morals, one of the easiest ways and one of the things that I found really helpful is watching or getting involved with children's games on phones, because I have never, ever in my life seen any series of systems so aimed at manipulating children into doing things. So there was a milkshake game that one of my children had, and you had to make the milkshake that the customer ordered. So the first level was really easy. Milkshake was simple to make. You had all the ingredients. The second level, you needed an orange straw. The only way you could get an orange straw is by buying the add-on pack. However, if you bought that add-on pack to complete level 2, on level 3, you needed a blue straw. And the blue straw was in the second add-on pack. And I worked it out. Now, something like about £50 worth of packs you had to buy to be able to complete this game. And you've got distraught children at my ankles screaming, please, can I have just 50p to get the add-on? And just 50 more p, just 50 more p. And you think, oh my God. And you look at games now.
There you get 100 levels.
This is it. And if you look at so many of the games now, this is how they work. They're free, which is great for most games. And there's loads and loads of good examples where the games are designed so that you can play it quite happily without ever paying. But if you want to have the special costume, so, I mean, Fortnite's a great example. You don't need to pay to make Fortnite a fun game to play. But if you're interested in getting the clothes and the outfits and the skins for your gun, then there are optional packs you can pay for. But then you look at something I see from Battlefront 2 on the Star Wars games from EA. You had to keep buying things to make the game playable. And for me, that's where ethics become a real problem, because there is absolutely no reason to introduce that kind of mechanic into the system with the loot boxes other than to make money off people. And I know everyone, we all need to make money, but you paid for the game, probably about £40 or £50 for that particular game. And then to enjoy it, you then have to continually buy more stuff. To me, that feels like a real sort of misstep in ethics. And I've had lots of children's games, and the number of times my kids come up to me asking me for Robux for their Roblox games, just saying, can I just have £10 worth of Robux? I think, well, no, because what are you going to do with it? Oh, this outfit that I really want that will make me the best princess in the game. You think, no, please, no.
And it's not just about the money, for sure. You're also teaching them a lesson there.
Yeah, and I mean we've used kind of online currency to teach the eldest, especially, about the value of money. Watching her kind of waste loads of in-game currency on one thing and regretting it horribly, getting conned by other people with in-game currency. She's been had by a couple of people where they've promised one thing and done the other. So there have been lots of interesting life lessons for them using this kind of stuff. But I think it's a really easy way to understand where ethics can get ignored for profit in this instance. Looking at big data, which you mentioned earlier, Farmville used to do this, where people wouldn't be able to get past a certain point and they'll know about it instantly almost because of the data they had. And that'd be the perfect opportunity to throw in if you pay for an extra 50 coins, obviously you can get past this level. So they'll instantly put advertising on that for, are you struggling? Here's a pack you could buy. So again, it's not really helping the end user. It's just trying to keep them, it's keeping them hooked for as long as humanly possible to rinse as much money out of them until eventually they get so fatigued by it, they give up. It's that kind of that real short-term mentality of we'll just keep making them pay until we can't get any more out of them.
And they leave the game.
Yeah, because I can't remember who said it now, but it might have been Ian Bogost actually. If you have to bribe me to play your game's no good. And I think that's something which we went through a real phase of that on Facebook with games that came out on Facebook that actually weren't very good, but people just got hooked on because they kept investing in it. And as you well know, the more, is it sunk cost fallacy? Something like that, where the more you throw into it, the more you then go, oh, well, I'm not stupid. So obviously I'm going to, I'll keep playing, because why would I put money into something that wasn't worth putting money into? Because otherwise that would make me really silly if I did that. So you just keep doing it. And then eventually you'll go, no, I really am being stupid here, and have to admit to yourself. And people know this. They've got psychology. Some of these games companies employ quite a lot of psychologists just to understand how to make players do more of what the games companies want. So you kind of look at some of this stuff and think, nah, this is not right. You're doing it for the wrong reasons, not for the benefit of others. So that's where I start. This is kind of why I started this whole ethics thing, because I got so fed up of this idea of just doing stuff because it makes you money. And I think actually on the ethics website that I started, that I've got it up here. The core code of this ethic, the core of this ethic is to not do any harm to others, not to cause harm to the end user.
Don't do evil.
Yeah, exactly that. Sort of, yeah, but taking into context what evil might be. But my example is gamification being used to manipulate users in a way that does not benefit them and put their needs at the core. For instance, a gamified health app may use nudges to encourage users to exercise more. That's actually in their best interest, and the app was installed and used voluntarily. However, an app that uses gamification techniques to manipulate children into buying add-ons or in-app currency has no benefit to the user and should be strongly discouraged. And I think that's kind of the real core for me, is this, manipulation itself isn't a bad thing. Manipulation just has a really bad kind of rap, I think, because we're being manipulated all the time. It's the reason for the manipulation. Fitness apps manipulate you into doing more exercise. Is that a bad thing? No. There's no evil intent in that. You installed the app to get fit, so the app is doing what it can to make you get fit. So I don't, it's a similar, it's like two sides of the same coin. In one app, it's telling me to buy more stuff because I want to play the game more. The other app is telling me to exercise more because I want to get fit. They're both using the same techniques, but which one is evil? It's not the technique that's evil. It's the intent of the technique that's evil in that instance.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we're mostly kind of running out of time. I think we've had a very productive conversation. But I just wanted to sort of rein back things to because you mentioned as well, I also like the example of Fortnite. And I like it especially because, again, they're giving you these add-ons which you can pay for or not pay for, but it's one of the most successful games in game history. I mean, these are not the guys pushing you to pay for the sake of paying. So again, we sort of made it full circle. You're seeing how these strategies and these way of doing things actually, I mean, I'm not saying everybody is going to make it to Fortnite just because you don't do it. You don't do evil, right? But there is a very broad space. There is a good place for doing things right and being very profitable. That it is not a contradiction. Not trying to extract every single cent you can from every single user you have. That does not lead you even to more profit necessarily. Actually, I would argue it does not even lead you to more profit in any case.
Because it's short term. Because it's such a short-term strategy.
Yeah, it's short-term. And again, if you're thinking about your returns, I mean, typically, if you think about it a bit further than your current need today, you think about it a little bit more. You want to be able to feed your family today, but also tomorrow, next week, next month, and for the next few years, right? Yeah. You don't just want to extract as much as you can. Maybe tomorrow be hungry, right? That's not what you want. If you think about it well. And I think we've splurged with Andrzej with quite a few strategies, ideas, practices, examples. This has been, I enjoyed the episode very, very much. I hope you did too as well, Andrzej, and the engagers for sure.
Absolutely, it's been great fun. And one last very quick thing. The reason Fortnite's successful is because it's fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree. I don't know about the Star Wars one that you were mentioning. I don't know if it's fun or not. I haven't played it. I have played Fortnite quite a bit lately as well, and it is definitely fun. There's so many things to do.
It was meant to be a Minecraft copy originally.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that was the whole idea of it. They wanted because Fortnite was its own little thing, and then they kind of were trying to create an idea based around Minecraft, which is why all the building stuff was there and why the original weapon was a pickaxe.
Huh. Interesting. I did not know that.
I'm pretty sure I haven't made that up. Someone will Google it and tell you.
They'll let us know if that is not correct for sure. So Andrzej, thank you very much again for being with us today. I think this conversation was very fruitful. I think there's many things to take from it. I think many recommendations, many things to think about, because it's not just about a specific technique or procedure that we do for all these things. I think there is a big picture that we have to get from this episode. And it's the importance of ethics, how to use them, many examples of things. But of course, in the end, in the last minute, it is going to be you making those decisions, convincing that client, convincing yourself or other stakeholders of how to do things, how to consider ethics in whatever it is that you're doing, which, Andrzej, I hope you agree with me, is a key, a central point to any of these designs.
Absolutely essential, yes.
So once again, thank you, Andrzej, for being with us today. However, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Engagers, thank you for listening to Professor Game podcast, and I'd like to know if you enjoyed this interview with the amazing guest, Andrzej Marczewski. This different interview. Please let me know. Just go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start into our email list, and reply to the first email you get, and let me know what do you think about this very focused, very topic-driven interview of today. And that way we can also be in contact. I'll let you know of any opportunities that Professor Game might have that is interesting for you. And before you go on to your next mission, please go ahead and subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.